Sea Salt and Company. I'm going to demonstrate on this image using our newest collection, the Beauty Box. Before we get started with this set, I want to zoom in and do a few hand edits to remove some blemishes before we move forward with this collection. So what I'm going to do first is duplicate the background layer. So you can work on this layer, and I am going to zoom up on this image. And this is just a quickly hand edit to remove some of the blemished areas here. And what I use is the patch tool to quickly fix these little areas. I'm going to zoom up just a little bit more. And all I do is make a selection around the area that I would like to fix. And once it has done that, then I just move it, and it will remove that blemish but still remain the texture of the skin. There's many ways you can do this. I prefer the patch tool. I feel it to work the best. Some will use content aware, and I think the blemish healing tool, things like that. But this one just seems to work really well for me. And there isn't too many blemishes that need to be fixed. Just a few bumps I'd just like to remove just really quickly. And you can do this on any type of skin, baby skin, working with newborns, anything like that. It's just really easy to do and doesn't take hardly any time at all. What I'm also going to do with this patch tool here is I'm going to kind of clean up the eyebrow area just a bit. I will work later with our collection using the brow bar, but before I do so, since I'm already making small hand edits here, I'd like to just go ahead and get some of the stray hairs out of the way. It's almost like a digital plucking of the eyebrows. Not much, I just want to clean it up just a little bit to give some more definition. I want to zoom out and take a look at the before and after, just a few things I changed here. And that's with our changes not done. I have a layer turned off and turned back on, kind of see just remove the bumps. That's all I wanted it to do. So I get a smoother application when I further edit this image. I'm going to flatten this as I'm finished. Now I'm going to move forward into working with our Flawless Face actions here to apply our Hello Gorgeous smoothing skin action along with the foundation shade to correct some color toning. You see it's kind of darker here between the eyebrows. It could be the lighting, things like that. So we're just going to kind of clean that up a little bit. And I am going to choose the airbrush with the foundation so I can get the better color correction. So I select it and I press play. And the pop-up will talk to you about painting on the black layer mask, make sure you have a white brush selected. Our actions, they have it built into where it should select the brush for you automatically. However, just double check before you start painting that the black layer mask is selected and you have your white brush. Make sure it's a soft brush and the size that you need for your subject. I'm going to zoom in just a tad. Go back to my brush, and I am going to paint on the black layer, but what I'm going to do first, I'm going to turn on the lightest shade. This will allow me to make sure that I'm getting it in all the areas where I want it selected, and then I will go back and select the correct shade for her skin tone, because this is obviously going to be too light for her. So I'm just going to paint over where I want to apply the foundation and to smooth out the skin. It also helps me, like if I go over an area that I don't want covered, like her hair or things like that, I can go back and erase that. Because once I match her skin tone, it might be harder to see doing that. Now that I've painted on, I'm going to switch over to my black paint so I can go back and erase off areas that I got away from her skin there. to make sure. I don't think I got any in her eye, but just in case, I'm gonna erase back. And also right at the nostrils, the openings, I'm gonna go back and move a little bit. Now I'm gonna go and select her correct shade for her face. So she does have a deeper tone here, and let's go with, let's try the espresso first and see. I'm gonna zoom out here so I can get a better look. I'm gonna turn it off and on. I feel that might be a little too light, so I'm gonna keep it in the back of my brain here that I do like it, but I feel it might be still a little too light for her skin tone. Let me go a little bit deeper with deep bronze. Now that one fits really nicely. It's almost like the espresso, but again, just a couple shades deeper with a little bit different undertone, and I think it fits better than the espresso for this image. And so I'm going to turn this off, and you can see this is before adding our Hello Gorgeous foundation, and the after. You can see it automatically just smooth the skin but retain the texture. It also color corrected. You know, we turn this off, and it was deeper in here, and you know, you got different shades of skin tone, and it really helped even out all of that immediately and easy in just a little click. So I'm going to flatten this down since we have found our foundation shade. And the next thing I'm going to work on, just very briefly here, is going in to sculpt and define, bring in some of the shadows and define her cheekbones a little bit more, bring in some depth. For this image here, I'm using the Contour and Sculpt My Face in the shade Deep. This was specifically designed for deeper skin tones to highlight and contour. And once that's done playing, you'll get a pop-up as well to speak about this collection. Using the full version of Photoshop, I have created a group to put all these layers into. However, the layer mask that's on here, you will not be painting on that. We're going to go into these individually. For Photoshop Elements users, it will not be grouped. They will just be a clipping mask over a background duplicate. But you will go into each of those just like we're going to do here. So within this action, we have several shades of colors to choose from. We got deep mocha and medium mocha, and that would be your colors for the contour, what we'd use like under the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, on the temple area, under the chin area to sculpt the face. And then we also have two shades that are lighter shades that work really well for adding some highlight, which we would put on the bridge of the nose, the cupid's bow, the chin, some in the forehead and under the eye area to brighten up those areas. And you want to hit the areas that the sun would naturally hit on the face if you were outside in the sun. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to work with the deepest shade here in Deep Mocha for the contour. Make sure you have your color selected, whichever color you want to use. So start with the black layer mask selected. You have your brush, and it's white, and it's a soft brush. And I'm going to zoom in up here so I can apply this correctly. And I'm just going to lightly paint right where I can see her cheekbones, right under it, just to define a little bit. And I'm also going to add just a little bit right here in the corners on each side of the chin. It just sculpts in the face. And then also I'm going to do a little bit up here in the temple area on each side. And then I'm also going to do it on each side of the bridge of her nose. And this helps slenderize the nose and define it. I'm going to go back in and erase back just to really contour it nicely. And then I'm also going to go back in. I'm going to take my brush opacity down to about 30%. And right here in the cheek area, because of the way her head's tilt, I want to make sure that the contour where I'm shading is applied in the correct dip under the chin and not so much on the cheek area itself, because that's where we're going to add some color, a little bit of blush. And then I'm also going to, where I, here on the temples, applied some of that contour, I just want to lightly lighten it up just a little bit. Erase back on it. I'm also going to do that as well on the nasal area. Because you don't want to add too much, you just want to make it look nice and natural. So let me zoom out here just so we can see where we added our contour and see if I need to make any changes. I'm going to turn off that layer. So that's before we added it and the after. So you can see where it automatically started sculpting the face. I did see over here I got some contour on the hair, which I don't want, so I'm going to erase back and put my brush back up at 100% and just erase back. See if I got it anywhere else secretly. Over here, erase back on the hair. Okay, now I'm happy with that. So the next color we're going to go on to is let's work with a little bit of a highlight color for her. Let's try the cocoa butter first and see what kind of reaction we get with it, the effect. If it's not one that I'm really happy with, we can also try the Cocoa Glow. And you can also use colors together. So let's say, you know, you like the deep mocha, the contour under the cheek areas, but maybe it might be better to use the medium mocha up in the forehead area. You can do that too. It just depends on your subject and the skin tone, things like that. So let's start with the cocoa butter. I've got my black layer mask selected, I got my brush selected, and I just want to lightly go in where I would want to see a little bit of highlight, which would be under the eye area, a little bit on the Cupid's bow, a dash on the chin, down the bridge of the nose, and also just a hint on the forehead. Now let me zoom out. So that is before without the highlight and the after. It is a little too much as far as the bright, so I'm going to dial back. It's at 30%, the layer is, and I'm going to put it at 20%. So let's turn that off and back on, and you can see it just nicely lit up the face where it should naturally highlight. So it looks much better. And just really quickly though, I just want to take a gander at the Cocoa Glow highlight and see the difference between the two. In case I might like one better than the other. So turn it off and back on versus the other. And I'm going to stick with the cocoa butter. I think it looks much nicer than the Cocoa Glow highlight for now, for this subject. What I would like to do is go in right back to this deep mocha. I'm going to choose my black paintbrush. I'm going to zoom in here. The color, the contouring on her nose is still just a little too dark for me on the sides. So I'm going to dial back. I'm going to put 40% opacity for my brush. I'm just going to lightly go over it again, just to dial back on that just a little bit. So that makes me more happier. So we'll turn off all of our contour and highlight, and there you have the after. Very easy to do, very simple. So we are finished with highlighting and contouring, so I'm going to flatten that image. The next thing we're going to work on is cleaning up the eye area and working on the eyes. So we're going to go under the Makeup Studio to the Wink and Wow, and we're going to click on Beautiful Eyes and press play. So after this action is played, it will tell you a little bit about each of the actions available within this collection. It's an all-in-one action to fix the eyes, to sharpen the eyes, give it a color pop, to brighten the eyes, things like that. So just press continue, and each of these have a black layer mask, so just use what you need to use. If you need to use them all, then use them all. What I'm going to do here is zoom up on the eyes, grab my brush, and I'm first going to work on the sharpen eyes layer, and I am just going to brush over the eyes. And then I'm going to brighten the whites, but there is, we're going to make some fixes here. So before I work on that, I'm going to click on Brighten the Iris and make my brush a little bit smaller just so I can give a pop of her color. And go ahead and add some color. And then we are going to dial back on this layer. It's at 100%. I don't want it too wild. It can sometimes add too much color, so I'm going to put it at 60%. And the same thing as to brighten the iris, we're going to dial back. It's at 30%, and put it at 20%, just enough. And then we are going to work on reduce the redness. So we'll get that layer mask selected. And now she doesn't actually have a lot of redness in her eye, but if you can tell here, you can see there's some yellowing in the eyes, and we are going to try to neutralize that as much as possible. I'm going to go back in with my black paintbrush here and remove over some areas to make sure I only stayed on the white of the eyes. And then earlier when we first started this, and I showed you how to hand edit using the patch tool, these little areas on her eyes, these little patches of dark colors, we are going to do the same thing to fix that. So what I'm going to do is just click on my background layer. I'm going to duplicate it, grab my patch tool, let me zoom in so I can get a really close selection. And I just want to circle the smallest part and just move it over, and see how I just kind of remove that there. You want to get in really tight just so you are correcting just what you need to correct. And that one is fixed. And there's a few over here. These ones might be a little more trickier, but we'll see. Now let me zoom out. So if we turn off that layer, you'll see the before we remove the patches in our eyes and the after. Now I'll turn off all these layers so you can see the before and after of making her eyes pop. So that's the before, and here is our after, fixing her eyes, which look very nice. I'm going to flatten all those. And now we are going to, let me zoom in here. We are going to do the Lights, Camera, Lashes, which is our mascara action, and press play. Again, this action will solely focus on the lashes only, which is wonderful. Finally something. So, black layer mask, and make sure your brush is white, and we're just going to go over where the lashes are. And that's before and after. The lashes are a little dark over here. I want to lighten that back up. So use my black brush and go back over that. Okay. off and back on. If you need your lashes darker, just open up the group and you'll see it add more mascara. It's yellow. You can click on it and it'll make them even darker. I'm going to leave that extra layer off for this selection. And flatten that once I'm finished. And now we are going to work on the brow bar. Let me zoom back, that was a little too much. Okay. So under Still the Wink and Wow, just click on the brow bar. It's going to help us shape and define her eyebrows, give definition to them. A pop-up bar will pop up and go over the section with you. Just press continue once you're ready. And the first one I always work on is the brow tints. I do the highlight very last because I want to get my shades correct first for her eyebrows. And all I'm going to do first, make sure your brush is selected, and this is going to just define the eyebrows. This has not added any tint yet, just defining the area. So I'm going to open up this group layer, and then we're going to find the shade that works best for her. Of course, her hair is darker, and her eyebrows are dark as well. For her, I'm going to start with medium brown, and you can see it just kind of covered them. I mean, it matched the color quite well, but let me go one shade darker and see that for her and her skin tone, it does look okay, kind of caramelized. Let me change that layer to multiply and see. Now see, that'd be a little too dark. I'm gonna go back down here in medium brown and I'm gonna multiply that layer and I'm gonna compare it to the other one. And I do like this shade much better. And let me dial back. I have it at 40%. It's a little too powerful, so I'm gonna do 20. And turn it off and back on, and that defined them nicely. It just made them pop more. So the next thing I'm gonna go into is to highlight and sculpt the brow to kind of give it more definition. And I apply this only in the arch areas, right under the brow, and at the outside corner. And we're going to dial back the opacity. And then we're going to clean this up. I want to make sure my brush is selected. I have a black paint this time, so it will delete. Just to make this blend in nicely. All right, let me zoom out. And as you can see, when I turn the layer off and back on, it just nicely sculpted the brow area. Make sure your color blends in really nicely. And it kind of shapes them as if they were also even plucked more, so it kind of just disguises any maybe extra hairs and things like that. So this is before the brow bar and after the brow bar. Very simply done. So we're going to flatten it. So the next thing I want to work on is under her eyes. And what we're going to use for this is under the Wink and Wow. It's called the Bye Bye Under Eye Corrector. Just select this and press play. Once the action's done playing, you will see a pop-up that again goes over this action and how to quickly use it. There's a black layer mask, so we're going to paint on this layer. And what we're going to do first is just make sure we have a brush, and we're going to paint under the eyes here. This helps smooth out under the eyes and conceal under the eyes as well. And then what we do after this is we have 4 different shades of concealer within this action, from a light shade all the way up to a deep shade, and they are color matched with all of our foundation shades, and they will match skin tones. So for this one, let me zoom out so you can kind of see the difference in the colors here. And then we're going to blend as well once we get there. So this would be the lightest shade. Of course, it's way too light for her. So I'm going to try our deepest shade here for our concealer's deep neutral. And what I want to do here is go up to our main grouped layer, and I'm going to drop down the opacity of this to where it nicely blends in. It has lightened up underneath the eyes, but it's not too much. And then make sure my black layer mask is selected because I really want this to blend in nicely here. Make sure I have my a black paint and my brush selected again. And I just want to go back in here just very lightly to make the bottom blend in more nicely. So here is the before and the after. You see it just softened the lines and brightened and concealed some of the coloring and lightened it up. So I'm finished with that. I'm going to flatten. Next thing we're going to do with the eyes is just add a little bit of color. I'm going to work with our smoked palette under our eyeshadow palettes. Within this palette has several eye colors, so just press play. And again, you can mix and match with all of our eyeshadow palettes, however you want to do it. Just for this particular one, I just want to stick with a simple eye and just kind of make your eyes pop, but not too much. So you'll get a pop-up that'll talk about, again, paint on the black layer mask with the white brush. And for this image here, zoom up, I'm going to use Loaded only on her eyelid. It is a really nice deep emerald kind of foresty green tone. It's really pretty. I want to make sure I have my brush selected, make sure my brush is a size just to go over her eyelids. I'm just going to paint in. And this shade looks so beautiful on her skin tone as well. And I'll go in and fix it once I get it applied just to the eyelid. So now all you want to do is select a black paint here because we're going to go in and remove just to clean up the lines. And I will zoom out so you can see the color that is applied. So if we turn off the layer, you can see before we applied the color and now with the color added. And it's just simple. It just gave that pop of color, and I think it looks really nice for her. So what I want to do now is just add a shade just to the lower lash line to complement our color on top. And the shade I'm going to go with is going to be Mushroom, which is a really nice like charcoalish gray tone, and I think it will complement the green very well. So what I'm going to do is make sure I got my brush back to white because I want to paint on, and make sure your black layer mask selected on the color that you want, and you're just going to go under the lash line. And I am going to erase back as well as I did the top lid, just to make it look nice and blended. And I'm also going to, see it is at 100%, I'm going to go down to 80%, so it really blends in even nicer and it's a little bit softer. So this is the bottom shade off and on, and looks really nice. Just really quickly, I'll group these so we can turn them all off and on. Very simply added. So I'm going to flatten that and dump the eye colors, as simple as that. And the next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of color to her cheeks. So we want to go to our blush palettes here. I'm going to work with the Blushing Love palette, and I'm going to press play just because there's several shades to work with. And you'll get a pop-up as well. It tells you about using your black layer mask paint on this layer, but make sure you have a white brush selected to apply the color. And I want this color just right here on the apples of her cheeks. That's where I want it. So I know exactly where I need to be when I apply this. So there in here is a shade that's already selected. So with that, I'm going to, on my black layer mask, just apply that color right where I want it. Let me zoom out so I can see how I need to blend. This color looks actually really nice on her, but what I want to do is kind of dial back on the color. It's a little too much. So the opacity of this layer is at 100. I'm going to go down to 20 and turn it off and back on. Let me go up to 30. I think 30 is really nice. It's not too much, but you can see that pop of a rosy tone to her cheeks. I think it looks really nice. So I am okay with that shade for this particular image. I'm going to flatten that and move on to picking out a lipstick shade. So I'm going to work with our La Creme palette, and that is under the Pout Perfect. So just, you can use any colors you want. We have two different palettes here, plus a lip gloss and a lip butter, and that's good for smoothing lips. If your person has like chapped lips, it works really well to smooth lips. So anyways, at the La Creme palette, I'm press play so we can get all of our shades up here. And there's already a shade in there selected. If you open up the group layers, you'll see there's one selected here. I just automatically leave it selected. I leave it turned on, so it lets me know where to apply my lipstick, and then I can go in and change my colors. This will not be the shade that I am going with, but it does really let me know, make sure I'm in my lines, where to go back in, erase that, things like that, being a deeper shade. So now I'm going to go back and erase and clean up these lines, maybe. Make sure you have black color selected. Just go in and erase back over, because we don't want any color out of the lines and nor any color on the teeth. So for this image, I would really like to select a more softer pinkish tone, since we've kind of kept it kind of neutral, not too overbearing. So I'm going to go up to Marshmallow Bunny, which is a pink and nude tone. And you can see here, this is what the color looks like on her. But what I want to do is, let me zoom out here. But what I am going to do here is go in and change the opacity of this layer to bring back, dial back on the color, so it's not so vibrant and bright and too much and overpowering. It takes away from the image. So I'm going to start at 70%, and I'm going to turn it on, or turn it off, and back on. And I'm okay with that opacity percent, 70%. I think it matches very nicely with the cheek color palette, cheek color that we selected. So it looks very nice and even. So if we turn it off and back on, that's our color, and I'm going to flatten. So now what I'm going to do, after I've applied my retouching, I want to go in and work on the overall image, which is sometimes what you do first, but for this particular image, I wanted to retouch the face first before I add any toning or definition to the whole image itself. And we have two choices under our Beauty Essentials. We have a clean base, which is like an all-in-one, cleans up your image for you. And then we also have the base designer. So here it's just full of stuff. We're gonna do that one, and allows you to kind of pick and choose how you want to do your image or work, or if it's underexposure, you know, underexposure, if you want to add some matte to it, things like that. So I'm going to press play. Once it is done playing, it will give you a pop-up box that talks about the group itself, and I'm just going to show you how to use the group. Inside this group is all the different layers of edits that you can do to your image, and you can edit each layer how you need it applied to your image. First, I'm going to zoom out on here so you can see the overall image. And I think it's exposed. The exposure is nicely on it, so I'm not too worried about fixing any overexposure, things like that. You can also sharpen your image if you need some sharpening. And you can also, each layer is set at different opacities, so you can change the opacity if it's too much, if you need less, things like that. I don't particularly feel like I need any sharpening on this image. You can fix the shadow, so you can see there, just brightened it up, brought some more detail in the background, fixed highlights, and we also have the mid-tone booster. So mid-tones kind of really work on shadows itself, and then of course your highlights brighten things up, so kind of like our Back to Our Sculpt and Fine does that, but it's almost like the studio lighting. We also have, of course, the underexposure. It will brighten it, or if your image is overexposed, you know, dim it down. Just a basic auto histogram that basically fixes things in an automatic way, how the computer feels it should be calibrated. There's a dehazer. If your image is kind of hazy or maybe kind of blurry in a way, it will kind of help bring back some of those details. You can also deepen the image. The contrast booster, it just dims down some of the shadows, things like that. You can add some color to your image and some warmth. You just need some warmth. So if it's too cool, kind of bluish, add some warmth to it. It'll kind of neutralize and make those colors look a little bit nicer. And it's almost like in this image as well, we're adding the warm it up would look actually very nice, because when I turn it off, you can kind of see some cool tones from the studio lighting. So if I turn it on, it looks nicer. However, I think it's still maybe too warm, so the layer is automatically set at 50%. I'm going to put it at 30%. And also there's a cool it down, so if it's too warm, you can also do it the other way. You can add some fill flash. You would just like some bright, you know, some more light in the center of your image. We can also make it a little bit matte, which I do like. I love matte. I love the matte look. I think it's a beautiful feel for almost any image, and for this one in particular, I am going to add some matte to it, but not as strong. It's at 70%. I'm going to go down to 40, and I kind of like where that is at 40. It just softens the image, and I just think it looks really nice. You can also add a soft haze, which is different than a matte, but for this image I'm not going to add that. I just want to do the matte. And I'm going to go back down here to fixing the shadows and things, since I've added some matte. Kind of see where my happy spot will be. I like the fix the highlights, and what that did is it kind of boosted the lighting in the image a little bit more. So for this particular image, that is what I'm going to do. That's all I'm going to do to it. I'm content with the way that it looks. So for this one, all I did was use fix the highlights. I warmed it up just a bit, and also add a little matte effect to it. And so that is it for this image. Thank you for watching.